Greetings, students, and welcome to this special episode of The Professor Travel. I am your host, The Professor Travel, coming to you from Southern California. This is the website, the vlog, and the podcast that you come to in order to learn more about different travel destinations. This is where we come as a community in order to discuss more. Hopefully, this will inspire you to travel more and ultimately to enjoy life more. Now, you can reach us on a variety of different social media platforms, starting, of course, with our website, which is at theprofessortravel.com. On YouTube, on Facebook, and now on TikTok, you can reach me at The Professor Travel. If you're an Instagrammer, you can find me there at _professor_travel. If you're a Twitterer, you can find me on Twitter at The Professor Travel, or excuse me, The Professor TR1. So strike that. It's The Professor TR1. And then finally, if you are a blogger, you can find me on Blogspot at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, our visiting professors are two of my favorite people from the state of Florida. This is Matt Allen and Kimbra Shaffer. How are you guys doing from over at Fintastic Cruising?
Doing good.
Great.
Awesome.
How are
Thank
you
you
doing,
guys.
Matt?
Oh, I'm doing great. We're a
Good.
little bit cold and windy over here in Southern California right now, but
It's 79 here.
whatever. Okay, so yeah, we're dealing in the low 60s right now and a little bit breezy. So, but I woke up this morning and it was 48 degrees. So yay on that. So in order for my students who may have not heard from you guys before, can you maybe go over a little bit about your credentials, either some of your educational background or maybe a couple places that you've traveled before?
Go ahead.
Okay. So my name is Matt, and I'm half of the dynamic duo here. Let's see where to start. I am, when you say what's your education, well, when you say the word education, I think, well, that's what I do. I'm an educator. I work at the aquarium here in Tampa, and I teach people about marine life and just science in general, but mostly animal-based things, and which is why I love to travel. And well, one of the reasons why I love to travel, especially throughout the Caribbean, where I get to see most of my favorite animals, which usually have scales, whether they be reptiles or fish. So, yeah, I'll let you talk a little bit more about what we do.
What we do?
What do we do?
Well, we cruise.
Well, we try.
Well,
Hey, maybe cruising will be back
we will
soon,
cruise.
very soon.
Yeah.
Very
So
excited.
my background, I sort of have an education background. When I was in school, I was in like tourism and hospitality. That was what I was going for. I did not complete it, but that's okay because that's what I'm still doing. I also work at the aquarium here in Tampa. I book things. So I'm right there. I'm doing what I was supposed to do. I just don't have a piece of paper to show for it. I also love to travel. There's a bug. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's not part of her
No.
CV or anything.
Yeah, so we cruise. I love the creatures as well. Yeah,
In fact, you guys have two scaly little guys at your house, don't you?
we have 3.
You have 3. I know about Zilly and I know about Luna. And
Yes, we also
who's
have
the other
Guinness.
Guinness is the other one I'm forgetting about. Okay. Okay. And about how many cruises do you think you guys have been on? I mean, separate. Like I know that I think Kimbra, you don't have as many cruises as Matt under your belt, but
Yeah, I only have 5.
only 5. Okay.
Only 5. I mean, I've been cruising since 2016, so 5
That's
is
awesome.
a pretty good number for
It's
that.
fantastic. Yeah.
Hopefully by the end of this year, I can add 2 more. We'll see how it goes.
Yes.
How many do I have? I usually know that number, but this is how sad it's been since it's been so long since I've cruised.
You
I
have
don't.
what, 23 or 24?
It's something like that. Yes, it's like it's like when you hit that certain age and you don't remember how old you are anymore. You're like, wait a minute, when was I born? You got to do math. That's kind of how it is for me cruising right now. Normally, I'm like, oh, I've got this many cruises, but yeah.
I haven't gotten to that age yet, Matt, but thank you for letting me know about that in advance. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
30,
Matt
I
and
think. Maybe earlier.
Matt and I are about the same age anyway, so
The
we're both
thing
youngins.
When you're younger and you do it, it's because you legitimately forget. When you're our age and you do it, it's because you just don't want to think about it.
Yeah, that's true.
At my age a couple weeks ago.
Well, now again, today's main topic, we're actually going to step away from Florida for a minute. And if people want to go back to the wonderful vlog and podcast that we did on Florida, they can do that through the Professor Travel and go to YouTube in order to be able to do that, or go onto the podcast. But today we're going to actually talk about the USVI, which is the US Virgin Islands. So I know, Matt, you've gone there before. Talk to me a little bit about what your understanding is of the US Virgin Islands for my students who may know nothing about it.
So the thing that I think is maybe the most interesting thing about the Virgin Islands is that it is technically part of the United States. There are 4, I did this because I used to think there were 3, but I learned there's 4 Virgin Islands. One of them is very small though, but and so it's cool because they're Caribbean islands. They're in the heart of the Caribbean, I would say, and beautiful islands. So to be fair, I've only been to St. Thomas, but it is one of my favorite places I've been as far as cruising or anywhere really, because it is just gorgeous, perfect environment. And the fact that it's a US territory makes it interesting because, like, say we wanted to move there, like we wouldn't have to do anything to get citizenship. You could just move there.
Yeah, that makes it fun. Now, each of the islands are a little bit different. Obviously, St. Thomas is the largest of those islands. And then there's St. Croix, which is, I think, the second largest. And that one has some really old, really cool Dutch architecture. And it's got a beautiful botanical garden. I think the third one, that's the large one, St. John, and that's got a huge national park as part of the island. And then the little one that you talk about is Water Island, which is off the coast of St. Thomas, where I guess you can ferry there in about 10 minutes. It's actually pretty fast to get to.
Yeah, just a little bitty island. It was I guess kind of weird because it was sitting there under control of another country, and then in 1996 they're like, look, this is in your front yard, just take it. So now, like, what are you waiting for, Water Island? So now it's part of the US Virgin Islands. And the other interesting thing, I guess, about the Virgin Islands is that it is the Virgin Islands, and there's the US Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands, and they're really, some of them, St. Thomas, and so they're part of the same landmass. St. Croix is a different island, obviously, but they're connected physically, but they're controlled by different countries, so they are different countries.
Absolutely. So that gives us a little bit of update. Let's talk a little bit about the geography. I'm going to jump over to Kimbra on this one. Now, Kimbra, we have, obviously the US is around the area there, but there's a lot of other countries that are just within, I don't want to say driving distance, but I guess it would be sailing distance around the area.
Driving.
Yeah, that's true. Like, what are some of the surrounding countries that you're aware of that are in the Caribbean there?
The closest one is probably Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna pull up a map that I had up here a second ago.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I think Puerto Rico is probably the closest one. And then, of course, there's Anguilla. I think that's how we decided it's pronounced. It would be probably...
When I looked at the pronunciation, it literally said, not to be confused with Antigua. So those are 2 different places, because we were trying to figure out, is this the 2 different places? And then right below that is
St. Kitts.
And right there is St. Martin.
Oh, okay, St. Martin.
Or St. Martin.
St. Martin. St. Kitts. What is happening? Guadeloupe. So yeah, right around there, just a bunch of islands. There's the DR, Dominican Republic, is nearish by too.
Okay, and let me ask you both: where do we fall on the? Is it K or is it Key with some of those islands that are out there? Because there's a lot of them that are owned by different cruise companies and the like. Where do we fall on that?
I think it depends on which one it is.
Okay.
So, I guess mostly Key, but then there's like Royal Caribbean's Coco Cay. It has to be K because they say perfect day at Coco Cay. It wouldn't work if it was Key. I went on a cruise to Princess Key, and they specifically did like a presentation, and they were like, it is not K, it is Key. So It's whatever you want to call it.
It'd
Matt,
be weird if we call it the Florida Key. The Florida Keys would sound weird.
Yeah, but that one is specifically spelled Keys.
That's true. That's fair. But that's probably, we just probably changed the spelling.
Probably
or
because that's
something.
what we do.
Yeah, I've done a fair bit of research into this, and the reality is there's no right answer. It's culturally different, so you can pronounce it however you want, and nobody can tell you you're wrong. I usually try and squeeze by in the middle and say like Half Moon K.
That sounds like you've been drinking, though. I mean, so I guess it really does depend.
That's one of the things you do on a K is you drink, or a key.
Very good. Good point. All right, let's switch back over to you, Matt. Talk to me a little bit about the weather. Now, there's a couple of extreme climate variances that happen down there. Obviously, hurricanes will happen, and flooding. I didn't know about this, but there's an easy way to remember when the hurricane months were, and I promise I didn't know about this until I heard it on your podcast. I'm assuming it's common knowledge from people on the East Coast, but it's not something we would hear on the West Coast. What is that term called?
It's if you're a fan of Friday the 13th, it's the Jason months. So July, August, September, October, November. Now, I will tell you, living in Florida for about 20 years, that yes, the Jason months, hurricanes can happen, any one of those, but they seem to be more likely to happen during, I would say, September, October, November. Especially September, October, maybe a little bit of August. Not as likely in June or July, not that it's impossible, not really as likely into November once you get past that first week or so. September is really when it seems like they tend to hit, but they can hit anytime during that, because basically what's happening is you just need the right conditions. You need the seas to be warm enough for that hurricane to form, and that's when it's warm enough.
So are you familiar with anything during like the June time or December time?
There have been hurricanes during those times, but they're very rare. I think we had a hurricane in June
last year.
Yeah,
last year we had them from June through November. I think they were crazy last year.
Yeah, but again, that was kind of the outlier, I think. It
was 2020. What do you expect?
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Thank you for stealing my thunder. It's like, what do you expect? It's the COVID years. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
January, we got a hurricane. Now in actually in St. Thomas, they have a holiday on, let's see, it's on the fourth Monday in July, and it's called Hurricane Supplication Day, where they pray to be spared from hurricanes. It used to be a paid holiday, but it no longer is. And then on October 25th, it's Hurricane Thanksgiving, where they give thanks for not being hit by hurricanes. So that gives you a little idea. That's like the fourth week in July. So that's you're still in the Jason, and then the last week of October. So it's before November, and that's when they're thinking it is. But yeah, Jason months are what people typically refer to as hurricane season.
Okay, wonderful. Now, let's dive into some culture, shall we? Because there's some really good things to have there. Now, Matt, really quickly, in terms of the religion in the area, I think it's a mix of Protestant and Catholic, but you said there's a larger than normal Protestant population, correct?
From what I saw, I did a little research on this, and it looked like about 60% Protestant, and then I think it was 20-something% Catholic. And then the other religions that they listed were all super low. Like I want to say less than 2%. Might have been a 5% in there. I don't even know if there was. So yeah, but predominantly Christian, and then it looks like majority Protestant, and then Catholic right behind it.
Awesome. And then in terms of the arts, from what I've seen, it's pretty much local folk art, but then occasionally you'll see an actor that pops up, like Kelsey Grammer, for example, who was born in the U.S. Virgin Islands and then moved to the States. Are there any other are there recording artists or other actors that you may have heard of that, or maybe we would have heard of that you're aware of?
I don't know of any, but I didn't even know about Kelsey Grammer. So I don't know. One of the things though that I think happens a lot in St. Thomas is, one of the ways that you can afford to live in St. Thomas, because you don't necessarily make a lot of money with most of the things you could do down there, is if you are an artist. So if you are an artist that probably creates things that have a Caribbean theme, apparently there are several that live there that make a pretty good living, um, living in St. Thomas making artwork.
Sounds nice. Now, Kimbra, I think for the most part, the language over there is primarily English, correct?
Yeah, English
Okay,
is
wonderful. But then let's just dive in really quick to one of my favorite subjects, which is food and drink. Sounds fun. Share with me some ideas or some things that you see. I have put a couple on the screen here. What are some food and drink that you're familiar with from down in the USVI?
yeah. So that one picture that you have on there is a pate, which is kind of like an empanada. Let's see what some of the others. Polenta, which is like a dumpling. There's a fish dish called fungi.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fish and fungi, fish and fungi, or
Not to be
fungi.
pronounced fungi like the
Right. That's
mushrooms.
right. That's when I read it, I was like, oh, it must be mushroom. No, there's no mushroom in this. There's no fungus among us in this. It's fungi, and that's polenta like dumplings, and then like a salted cornmeal, and it's served with fish fillets.
Huh. And then cow heel soup is one that you talked about, right? That's odd.
It is odd. What about as far as drinks go? What would I want to enjoy to drink down there?
Yeah, so two of the most popular drinks would be the painkiller, which is like a pineapple. What else was in that? Pineapple, orange,
Coconut,
coconut.
orange.
Yeah, it's like a frozen yummy drink. And then the other one would be like a bushwhacker, which is was that chocolate and
It's coconut chocolate,
Bailey's,
Bailey's,
Vodka.
vodka.
and
Yeah.
it's a frozen drink too, right?
They both can be frozen. I don't think they have to be frozen. I think normally the bushwhacker is served more as like a milkshake kind of a
Yeah.
thing. I've had a bushwhacker. I don't think I've had a painkiller. I've heard of the painkiller. I met a graffiti artist in St. Petersburg named Painkiller, but yeah, the bushwhacker is really good. It's got all my favorite
Yeah,
things in it.
that's the one I want.
Yeah, and
You know what? Yeah, considering I'm a chocoholic, I think I can agree with you on that. So, but of course, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up rum because that's prevalent all throughout the Caribbean. And
I think there's rum in that. Yeah, rum is definitely a drink that you will find there.
Is that in the painkiller?
It is in the painkiller.
Yeah.
Not in the bushwhacker, surprisingly. Amaretto is the other thing that I was missing out of that one. But one of the things that is popular in St. Thomas, not considered like an official drink, are banana daiquiris, which I believe are rum-based drinks. And those, I haven't had one of those, but those I've heard are really, really good as well. There's like a car, like a trolley car you take up the mountain in St. Thomas, and people go up there just to get the banana daiquiri up there, and probably for the view. But I don't know. It's just you put it on a
let's
scale.
let's just jump over that for one quick second because we're getting into sports and recreation. And of course, sports obviously you have soccer and you have scuba and snorkeling and all these different water sports are there. You guys recently had done on Fintastic Cruising on your podcast a really wonderful review of all the different things, all the different types of excursions and things you can do on St. Thomas. So for my students that are out there or for any of the listeners that are listening, please jump over to Fintastic Cruising. Do you guys happen to know like around what number that was? I don't even I'm sorry I put you on the spot for that one, but I wasn't sure.
It
I
was
want to say it was like 3 or 4 episodes ago. It is. I can find it real quick because I'm fast.
and there are a lot of things to do in St. Thomas, and one of the beautiful things about St. Thomas is that it has that elevation. So some of the Caribbean islands have mountains, some of them are very flat. We're used to Florida, which is very, very flat. So it's surprising when you get to an island like St. Thomas and you see like mountains with houses on them. And like one of the things that we talked about in the podcast is that a lot of people will stop at this scenic spot where you can kind of overlook the area. If you go on a cruise there's a spot where you can look into Charlotte Amalie Bay, and there's 2 ports where cruise ships dock. And if there's ships in both of them, you can see both ships, and they're fairly far apart in that area.
Yeah, that episode is depending on where you're listening to it. On iTunes, it's episode 82. We had a mishap with episode numbers. On everything else, it's probably 81. It's called What to Do in St. Thomas.
Got it. Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that, by the way. And I love that episode. That's why I wanted to plug it. It was a really fantastic episode. You guys did a great job on that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
In reference to local holidays, normally with a lot of states, we don't have a lot of local holidays. However, the U.S. Virgin Islands does have a couple of holidays worth mentioning. What was the first one, Matt, that you were aware of that we have this black and white picture down here at the bottom from?
So that is the Emancipation Day holiday. Is that correct? Is that the one you're
Yeah,
talking
it's
about?
when they lowered the flag of the Dutch and then rose the U.S. flag.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's not Yes, that is when
Is that transfer day?
that's Transfer
Transfer
Day.
days.
Right.
Sorry, yeah.
Transfer Day. Yes. So during around World War One, the U.S. said, "Oh, you know what? We need this. We need to buy this island as a strategic point to defend the United States." So they did. For $25 million. They bought the Virgin Islands, not the British Islands, and yeah. So that then it became a U.S. territory. However, it was run by the military, and the citizens there were not considered citizens of the U.S. until quite a bit later, when they finally got a governor to run, their elected governor, and they got full U.S. citizenship. That happened, yeah, a little while after that.
And then they also have another holiday that I'm familiar. Well, I mean, we've already talked about the hurricane holidays,
Right.
but there's also another holiday that I'm aware of, which is I think it's like the unification, um, or territory unification between Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. It's kind of like a celebration of those two coming together and you know, respecting each other and not going to war or doing anything like that. So it's a diplomatic holiday actually, and I think that one takes place in October. Are there any other holidays? You were saying Emancipation Day was another one that you were talking about,
Yeah.
or
So the history of St. Thomas and the Virgin Islands is there was a lot of European countries fighting over the Virgin Islands, and so there were colonies on Puerto Rico and different areas that were constantly raiding other places, and you know that and eventually that sort of got sorted out, and the British or the I'm sorry the Danes became owners of it for a long time. So Emancipation Day is actually July 3rd, and they celebrate when all the slaves were freed, which, to St. Thomas's credit, happened the before Denmark did it. So
excellent.
that was kind of cool.
All right, so let's talk about population. Kimbra, let's talk about population. What was the approximate size? And I'm going to say approximate because we're not sure whether it's just St. Thomas or whether it's the entirety of all the Virgin Islands. But what was the population overall with the U.S. Virgin Islands? Do you think?
So I actually looked it up after we were talking about it when you guys were talking about other things. So the total population, about 100, almost 106,000.
Okay.
St. Thomas alone is about 50,000.
Okay.
So St. Thomas alone is almost half.
That is ridiculously huge for a small series of islands like that. But I guess, when your primary focus is on tourism and travel, it's not surprising that you're going to see, a fairly large amount of residents that are going to be catering, especially to the hospitality industry that are there. As you can see from some of the economy listed on here, you have companies like the Ritz-Carlton and Marriott, Westin's, Starwood, Renaissance. Royal Caribbean Group has some economic growth based out of the U.S. Virgin Islands, but then they still have your normal businesses. They have your Home Depots. IBM actually does a little bit of hiring down there. Verizon does as well. McDonald's. The government also has a pretty sizable number of things they do either through the U.S. Army that has a base down in that area, or alternatively through the government itself. A company that I was not familiar with that apparently does a pretty good amount of business down there is a company called, and I think I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm going to say it anyways, is Diageo, Diageo, and they are a distributor of alcohol, which would make sense if you're growing sugarcane and you're exporting rum out of the area. But in addition to these, were there any other companies that you may be familiar with that maybe I haven't mentioned that might be fairly sizable in that area?
Really, the main thing I found is the tourism industry, which is, I mean, there's obviously the cruising industry normally is really huge there. They can handle a few ships, but I mean, St. Thomas is a great destination. So, like you mentioned, all the different resorts and stuff like that. But then, of course, all of the other things, the restaurants, the shops, the taxi drivers, so much of economies and islands like that is dependent on tourism, because it just filters through all these different types of places. And so that's the only thing I know of.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question, specific to cruising. If I was to go to St. Thomas, am I having to tender to the location, or do they have an actual permanent dock where the ships can park at?
They do have permanent docks. Yeah. So,
Okay.
but what you can't do is you cannot take a cruise ship to Water Island because the cruise ship's probably bigger than the island. And you can't take a cruise ship. That's probably not accurate, but it's not too far off. And you can't take a cruise ship to St. John because it's very protected. You have to go to St. Thomas and then take a taxi, water taxi, over to St. John. You can, however, uh, you can port in St. Croix, and I don't know for sure if that one is a tender port or not. I feel like it's not, but I am not 100% sure on that.
I'll have to do a little bit of research on that. I'm kind of curious.
Some
Now, in
field
terms,
research, I think, is what we need to do on that one, Scott.
yeah, well, there you go. um, in terms of travel and transportation, are you familiar with the structure over there in terms of like, do they have major highways? Like, how is it structured out there, or is it pretty much all just streets?
So I can tell you, my experience being on the road in St. Thomas is like a lot of places you hear about in the Caribbean. It's crazy. Like first of all, they drive on, I believe in St. Thomas, they drive on the other side of the road, but they drive like, like you're like, how are we going to make it around this curve in this vehicle? And then not only do you make it around the curve in the vehicle, but another vehicle makes it around the same curve at the same time going the opposite direction. You're like, did I lose something? Did we just do that Harry Potter thing with the bus?
Yeah.
What just happened? It's crazy, and the traffic can be incredibly dense. They do have an airport on St. Thomas called Cyril E. King Airport. I think I'm saying that correctly. And then they have one in St. Croix called the Henry E. Rolson Airport. And those are where you would, if you were not on a cruise, that's where you would fly into one of those islands, and then
Airports.
yeah, well, you're
Island.
flying.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I guess
I'll
we
give it
should
to
say
you.
airport because flying into the island sounds a little bit like you're crashing.
Dangerous. Yeah, exactly.
Like, what's that? That joke. Oh, I can't think of his name now. It used to say a near miss. When you have two planes, they have a near miss. That's a hit, a near miss. They nearly missed. That was a
George
Carlin.
Carlin. There you go.
Yes.
And then in terms of tourism, now this is a question that I'd like to pose to the both of you. When you think in terms of just your travels generally in the Caribbean, like what are your favorite things to do tourism wise?
I mean, I like to be in the water. So I'm sure Matt's going to say the same thing. Snorkeling, diving, exploring. But I also like the beach. Matt's okay with the beach, but I enjoy the beach.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I love the culture of the Caribbean. I like the food. I like the people. I like the music. But what really draws me there is the ecology, the wildlife, underwater especially, but even on the islands. I just love that atmosphere. I do love the beach atmosphere. What she's talking about is I'm not really the type that's going to sit and just lay on the beach for long periods of time normally. But I do like to be at the beach, especially if that beach has crystal clear water with things swimming in it that I can go look at with my mask on. So,
Yeah.
but that's, as far as touristy stuff, like that's what I think of in the Caribbean is, you go there, you meet the people, you eat the food, you listen to the music, you experience the wildlife, and that's kind of the big picture for me for the Caribbean.
Now I do want to stress, because I mean, people who have listened to my podcast know I'm a city person and I like doing things within a city. So I know that there are museums there. I know that there's history, very rich history to explore there. I know there's, as we said, food, which I love. Do we know if there, like with some of the Caribbean islands, there's a pirate history? Do we know if there's any type of a pirate history with the U.S. Virgin Islands or anything along those lines?
there definitely is in St. Thomas, because one of the things that happened in St. Thomas when it finally kind of settled down from European powers fighting over it is they decided to establish it as, they started growing sugarcane and they made it a plantation place, unfortunately. But also they were like, hey, let's open this up and make it a safe port for pirates. So there is a lot of pirate history there, for better or for worse. That is a thing that is there. And there are a lot of forts there that you can visit and that sort of thing. It is a very strategic location because of the elevation, because of just where the island is located. It's kind of in the center of the Caribbean in a sense, just south of Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, but just north of all those kind of southern Caribbean islands. So it's a really good location for whether you're a pirate stopping off or you're trying to protect your country from pirates. Also, you mentioned cities. So the Charlotte Amalie is like the biggest city in the Virgin Islands, and that is the kind of port area between the two cruise ports. It's not what you and I would normally think of probably as a big downtown area, but it is often, I think, referred to as downtown. And it is a place that is fun to walk around. Like it's got a little bit of like old architecture where you're walking through and you feel like you can kind of imagine that you're back in the 17th century or 18th century as a pirate walking through these small skinny streets and alleys, and the shape of the shops, and now there's still lots of food and different shops and stuff there. It's a really fun place to just go and walk around and explore.
Very cool. I like that. Now, in terms of the government there, it is a U.S. territory, so it is based on the U.S. government. They're going to have to change their state seal now that they have 4 islands, so and a lot of inlets too. But I don't know if those all count. But they have a governor. They do have representation in Congress in terms of they have, I think, one person who is a representative from the U.S. Virgin Islands, but they don't have senators, obviously, because they're not a state. Do we know if they are primarily, conservative or liberal? Did any of your research detail any of that?
I did see that they have multiple parties represented there. They do have Democrat, Republican, and independent parties all represented. I didn't see if they lean left or right or center or somewhere else from my research.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. Sure. Not a problem.
But I know that I don't know how strongly they're trying to become a state. I know that's a big thing that Puerto Rico would, I think Puerto Rico is trying pretty hard to become a state to get
yeah, I think right now Puerto Rico and DC are the ones that are really trying to push statehood. So
yeah.
So very cool. And then in terms of resources, now this is the one that caught me off guard, because I'm normally used to, when I'm looking at the different territories and states, I'm trying to determine, like, what is the chief export from a state? Like, what are the natural resources that come across? And so with a lot of states, you'll have oil or gas or coal or timber or something like that. Here it's a little bit different, because you have, coral reefs and you have mangrove trees, which are really critical to the ecology of the area more than anything else. Can you tell us a little bit about that, since you are more familiar with the generic understanding of why it is important to ecology to have both of these things in place?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of my specialty here, right? So this is what I do for a living, is talk about these 2 habitats, are the main habitats that I really focus on, because they are critical, not just in St. Thomas, but everywhere in the world where mangrove and coral reefs exist. Coral reefs represent about, well, I don't remember the number now. It's like 1% of the world's oceans or something like that, and 25% of species. You see different numbers, but it's a remarkably high number of marine life that depends on a very small area in our oceans. And the thing to remember is that these coral reefs, they not only do they have the animals that we think of that live on them, the parrotfish and the corals and the crabs and the sponges, but there are a lot of other animals that depend on the coral reefs as part of their life cycle. So you have animals that may spend part of their life cycle there, or maybe they're dependent on food sources there. There's a lot of plankton that comes off of or depends on coral reefs. And when we talk about like oxygen that's produced in the world, people tend to think of the rainforest, but in reality, a much larger percentage of our oxygen comes from phytoplankton in the oceans. And without coral reefs, that is a big hit to the phytoplankton. Now, the mangrove trees also are super important because the red mangroves, which is what's pictured here, have these what are called prop roots, and they create sort of this labyrinth under the shallow water, and they are a nursery to lots and lots of species of animals, as well as a home, permanent home for others. That could be birds, that could be fish. But the important economic part of this is that a good percentage of the fish that are commercially fished for, that people eat as a seafood source, spend at least part or all of their life in mangrove forests or mangrove swamps. So they're super, super important. They're also important because those prop roots, they hold together the substrate that's underneath there. So it cuts down on erosion. One of the things we did in Florida is we got rid of them because there's like mosquitoes and they block the beach. And then we found out that, water moves earth if there's nothing to hold it in place. And that gets really expensive. And also you lose a lot of your animal wildlife, which can be bad for the economy as well as just the ecology of Florida. And mangrove trees, because of all those roots and the way that they're kind of cemented in, when a hurricane does come through, mangrove trees and coral reefs are things that can take some of the energy out of a hurricane or a large tropical storm and can reduce some of the damage from those events. So both critically important. And for as far as the St. Thomas is concerned, I mean, the reason that people go to St. Thomas is it's a Caribbean island. The reason the Caribbean islands are so beautiful is because of their wildlife, their nature, and the coral reef is a huge, huge part of that. I don't think that they would have near the tourism that they have if they didn't have the coral reef system, and they wouldn't look the same without their mangroves.
I would definitely agree with that. And thank you so much for sharing that. One thing I also want to share about your podcast is that you, on a weekly basis, do a wonderful segment called The Cruise Creature. And thank you again for giving me nightmares about the parrotfish and the sand that I put my feet in. So if you want to understand what that's about, please listen to their podcast and they'll tell you a little bit more about that. Now, in terms of the education, really with the U.S. Virgin Islands, there's really only one college to speak of there, and that is the University of the Virgin Islands, which was established in 1962. But Matt, you're familiar with the literacy rate there as well, correct?
Yeah, apparently they have a 90% literacy rate, which is
Pretty
awesome.
good. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially for such a remote place. It's
Mhm.
really great that that's the case. And then in terms of crime statistics, now again, I understand that this is part of the U.S., so of course, there are guns that people have there, but in terms of foreign and domestic terrorism threats, there's not foreign or like I don't think of any like large scale foreign or domestic terrorism threat that has emerged out of the U.S. Virgin Islands that I'm aware of, at least.
I don't
Do you
really know of
guys?
any in the Caribbean that I know of. I mean, there may be something I'm not aware of, but yeah, I don't think that so far, fortunately, and hopefully it'll continue, they have not been targeted in the Caribbean. I mean, if any of them would be, I guess maybe a US place would, but I don't think there's a lot of strategic value to that. So
Well, and there's a
hope
huge military base there too, so
well that's true.
that could be a deterrent.
Current, yes.
So, I do want to touch base with you guys on one thing before I let you go, though. You guys obviously have a great series of fantastic items around the internet. You have Fintastic Studios, which is a wonderful YouTube channel that you guys have cultivated and created, which has amazing content on there, has wonderful, videos of your trips. I recently saw something on there with regards to a rather large river potato. So if you're interested in those lovely creatures, you can go see that. Also, you guys have the Fintastic Cruise community on Facebook. But then, of course, how I got introduced to you, the podcast, of course. But Kimbra, you guys have one other thing that you guys are doing now. Talk to me about Fintastic Travel.
Yeah, so we are also travel advisors. So we can book all of your travel needs. We are focused on cruising, but we can do everything. So that's Fintastic Travel.
Awesome. Thank you again, Matt and Kimbra, for sharing that with us. Again, to my students that are out there, if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to send them over to me, Scott at theprofessortravel.com. Again, Matt and Kimbra, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
Now, for my students that are still out there, if you're on YouTube right now, hit that bell icon right above you in order to be notified about when new videos come out. If you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost extra, and we really appreciate the hit. And then, of course, if you like this content and you want to see more of it, give us a thumbs up. But if you're listening on the podcast, by all means, please feel free to rate us, review us. We really appreciate any feedback. Feedback is a gift, so thank you so much for that. So until next time, I am Scott. I am the Professor Travel, and make every day a travel adventure. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.